AITA for letting my dad disown me over my sister's $17,000 debt? My name is Amanda Reynolds. I am 33 years old. I work as a financial analyst in a medium-sized company in Chicago, and until 3 weeks ago, I believed that the greatest achievement of my adult life was about to happen. Signing the contract for my first condo. 8 years of saving. 8 years of packing my lunch from home in reusable containers, turning down trips, driving an old reliable sedan that I refused to replace. 8 years building a number in a savings account that meant much more to me than money. It meant proof. Proof that I had done everything right. Proof that the decisions I had made alone, without a support network, without anyone's help, had been worth it. The condo was in a quiet neighborhood in Lakeview, 2 bedrooms, a small balcony with morning sun, and a kitchen that made you want to learn to cook just to have an excuse to be in it. I had visited the property 4 times. 4 times because every time I walked in and saw that light coming through the window, I needed to feel it again. I needed to confirm that it was real. The mortgage loan had been denied to me 2 weeks before the dinner with my dad. The bank manager was polite but direct. He told me there were inconsistencies in my credit profile and recommended that I check my history with the credit bureaus before trying again. I assumed it was a system error. Banks make mistakes, systems fail. I wrote it down in my planner to resolve it the following week and went on with my life. I did not resolve it. And then Friday came. My dad, Robert Reynolds, is not the kind of man who uses the word urgent without a reason. He has managed a small hardware and electrical supply store in Indianapolis for almost 30 years, and urgent in his language is reserved for when a supplier does not deliver, or when the cash register breaks down on a Monday morning. So when he called me on Thursday night with that specific word, I felt something move deep in my stomach. 2.5 hours on the interstate to Indianapolis. I arrived at 7:30 in the evening. The kitchen table was empty, no plates, no food, no vinyl tablecloth that my mom had never taken off since I was a little girl. Just my dad sitting on one side, my mom on the other. And that kind of silence that needs no explanation to tell you something is very wrong. My dad did not beat around the bush. He told me that my sister Sophie had a debt of $17,000, that her business, an online clothing store that had never seemed exactly solid to me, had gone under. That there were loans, past due accounts, creditors pressing her, and that I was going to pay for all of it, not as a favor but as an obligation. Family takes care of family, he told me. You can do it. She cannot. I looked at my mom. She was twisting the wedding ring on her finger, as if trying to tune into some radio frequency that did not exist. She did not look me in the face. I asked her if she agreed. She told me my dad knew what was best. It was not a conversation, it was a sentence read aloud with the same intonation he uses when telling a customer that that is the price. No negotiations. I slowly got up from the chair, grabbed my purse, and told him that then I was no longer his daughter, since that was the condition. I said it without yelling, without crying, without drama. I said it like someone handing over a key they realized they never should have carried. I walked out and did not look back. On the drive back, somewhere between mile marker 60 and mile marker 80, a detail began to bother me in a physical way, almost like an itch. $17,000. He had said that number with surgical precision. Not almost 17,000 or around 17,000. 17,000 is the kind of number you memorize when you have spent time studying it, not when you heard it in passing. My dad knew that debt inside out. I arrived at my condo in Chicago around 10 at night. I opened my laptop before taking off my coat. I checked my credit report. My score was 320. I read it again. 320. On a scale where anything below 500 is already severe risk territory, I was in the basement. There were 3 personal loans I had never taken out, 2 credit cards with high limits I had never applied for, a payroll loan linked to an employer that was not mine, all with late payments, some in collections. The registered mailing addresses on all those contracts were the same. An address in Indianapolis that I recognized immediately. It was my parents' house. I sat on the edge of the bed for an amount of time I cannot accurately calculate. The condo was completely silent. The city outside made its normal noises. A car, a siren in the distance, a dog barking. And I kept staring at those numbers until they stopped being numbers and started being something else, a word I had not yet said out loud. Fraud. I added everything up in my head because I am a financial analyst and my brain just does that even if I do not ask it to. The total of the open debts in my name was $17,800, almost exactly the number my dad had quoted at the kitchen table. He was not asking me to pay Sophie's debt. He was asking me to silently take on a debt that already existed under my name. A debt that someone had built over months, maybe years, using my social security number, my identity, my financial history as raw material. I spoke out loud for the first time alone to the empty condo. My family used my identity without asking me. And then I grabbed my cell phone and called the only person I knew would answer at 11 at night without asking questions before saying hello. Melissa works in forensic auditing. That is the kind of job where you spend your days digging up what people tried to hide in spreadsheets and bank statements. She answered quickly because she learned through practice that financial emergencies do not have a schedule. I told her everything in chronological order, with no emotion in my voice, the same way I would present a report to a client. The dinner, the number, the credit score, the contracts I had never signed. Melissa stayed quiet for a long time for her, as she usually interrupts you before you finish your second sentence. Then she told me, "You need a specialized lawyer tonight." She gave me the name of a professional who had worked on a similar case before, a situation where an ex-partner had taken out loans in the victim's name. The lawyer's name was Alexander Bennett, and according to Melissa, he was meticulous. Exactly what you want when the situation is serious. I sent him an email at 2 in the morning with all the documents I managed to gather that night. Screenshots of the credit reports, the bank's rejection letter, and a written summary with the date, time, and content of the conversation with my dad. I wrote it as if I were drafting an internal memo, facts, sequence, no adjectives. Alexander replied at 6:40 in the morning. 4 lines. I reviewed the attached files. The case constitutes identity theft with family involvement, including document forgery. Do not contact your family. Do not confront anyone. We need to document everything before making any move. Do not contact your family. That instruction stayed on the phone screen like a glass wall. On the other side were my mom, my dad, my sister, the house with the vinyl tablecloth on the kitchen table. On my side was a lawyer I had not met in person, telling me to treat the people who raised me as suspects in a case. But I spent years analyzing corporate financial statements. I learned that the problem is never the number on the screen. The problem is what the number represents. I learned that the damage is proportional to the time it was kept invisible, and I learned mostly that feelings are not evidence. I wrote to Alexander, "Understood. What do I do first?" He replied in less than a minute. "Check the mail forwarding history at the USPS. If someone changed the delivery address of your bills without authorization, that is a serious issue." I opened the USPS website. My heart was calm, my chest did not hurt. It took me 12 minutes to find what he had described. A mail forwarding request made 2 years and 8 months ago. All mail addressed to Amanda Reynolds at the address I had used as a reference before moving to Chicago, redirected to a P.O. box in Indianapolis. The signature on the request was my name, but it was not my handwriting. I have known my own handwriting since the first year of middle school, when a teacher made me copy text by hand for an entire grading period as punishment for having illegible handwriting. I learned to write clearly and uniformly with a capital A, making a specific curve that no one else in my family reproduces in the same way. The A in that signature was crooked in the wrong direction. Someone had practiced. They had gotten close enough to fool a distracted post office employee, but not close enough to fool me. I took pictures of everything. I sent it to Alexander with one line. "Someone forged my signature to divert my mail." He replied, "This changes the scope. I need you to come to my office on Monday." It was 6:45 on Saturday morning. I had not slept. I went to the window and stared at the street while Chicago slowly woke up. Delivery trucks, the light of a bakery opening, a man walking 2 dogs. I thought about the number of account statements, receipts, collection notices that had arrived in those 2 years and 8 months and that I had never seen. Every single one of them had ended up in that P.O. box. Every single one of them had fed the silence that kept me in the dark, while they used my identity as collateral for a life that was not mine. The phone rang at 7:30. It was my dad. I answered because Alexander had said not to confront. He had not said not to listen. My dad told me that I had made my mom cry all night. He said I had walked out as if family meant nothing. He said I was ungrateful. He did not ask how I was, he did not ask what I had found. He asked nothing, he just accused. I let him speak until he finished. Then I told him in a calm voice, "Dad, we need to talk about the origin of the money, not about who is going to pay it, but about where it came from." Silence. For seconds. 5. Then he told me that family takes care of family and hung up on me, but in the 5 seconds of silence before that sentence, I already had the answer I needed. Whoever has nothing to hide does not stay quiet when someone brings up the origin of the money. I called Melissa back and told her I was going to need to ask for a week off from work. She asked me if I was okay. I told her yes, and it was true in a strange, cold way that I still could not completely name. It was not strength, it was clarity. The difference between the two is subtle, but anyone who has been out of clarity for long enough learns to recognize it when it returns. I went to sleep at 8 in the morning with my phone face down and the feeling that for the first time in a long time I knew exactly where I stood, even if the ground was exactly the place I least wanted to be. Alexander Bennett's office was on a 12th floor overlooking the city center, and he was the kind of professional whose desk has no decorations at all, just documents organized with a logic I immediately recognized as the same one I use in my spreadsheets. Everything in the place that maximizes efficiency, not aesthetics. He spread the papers on the conference table like a surgeon arranging his instruments. Credit bureau reports, the mail forwarding record, copies of the loan applications he had requested directly from the financial institutions, a copy of my official signature taken from notarized documents. It was a 3-hour meeting. I walked out with a complete map of what had happened. 2 years and 8 months ago, someone had requested my mail redirection. A month later, the first personal loan was taken out in my name, $1,250 from a fast credit company. 6 months later, a second one, this time for $2,700 at another institution. Then a credit card with an $850 limit. Then another. Then a fraudulent payroll loan of $7,400, the biggest of all, linked to a fake job someone had invented from scratch. Total $17,800 in contracts with my social security number, with my name with a signature that was almost mine. Alexander showed me the enlarged signatures side by side with my original one. The person who had signed my name was skilled. They had captured the general rhythm, the slant, the relative size of the letters, but there was a constant detail in all the forgeries. The R in my last name, Reynolds, started with a different stroke. The original goes from bottom to top before curving. The forged one went from top to bottom, a habit of someone who forms the letter differently in their own name. It was the same mistake on all 6 documents, the same hand, the same person. Alexander said I had 2 options. The first was to file a police report, notify the credit bureaus, and contact the financial institutions individually. A slow process between 12 and 18 months for full score recovery, but technically viable. The second was to do nothing, assume $17,800 in debts I had not contracted, lose the condo, and wait for the situation to resolve itself, which he made clear to me, with the tired patience of someone who has explained this many times, was not going to happen. There was a third thing I wanted to do before taking either of the 2 formal paths. Give my family 7 days to do the right thing. Alexander studied my face for a moment. Then he said, 7 days. After that time, I file everything without waiting. I agreed. That night in the condo, I opened the drawer where I keep all my important documents, tax returns from the last 6 years, rental agreements, insurance policies, historical bank statements of the accounts that were actually mine. And at the bottom of a blue folder, I found a form my mom had asked me to sign 18 months ago when I was going on a work trip for a week. She told me it was a simple power of attorney, just to sign for a package if it arrived while I was away. It sounded reasonable. Daughters sign things for their mothers. It is not uncommon. I placed that form next to one of the loan contract copies. The similarity was immediate. My mom had used that paper as a model. She had studied my signature like someone studies a map, marking where the curves made sense, where the letters connected. She had gotten close enough to fool an online lender employee looking at a screen for a fraction of a second, but she had carried with her that mistake in the R, that single stroke that gave away another person's hand. I took a picture of the two documents side by side and sent them to Alexander with one line, same hand, different person. He replied 10 minutes later. Tomorrow I will confirm the ownership of the P.O. box. Await my call. I lay down in bed. Without turning off the light, I thought about my mom writing my name on birthday envelopes, that careful handwriting I always recognized from afar. The same hand that wrote with love on the back of the cards had learned to forge my name on credit contracts. I could not separate the two images that night. I fell asleep trying. On Tuesday morning, Alexander called me with the confirmation I already expected, but which still hurt when it arrived in concrete words. The P.O. box in Indianapolis was registered under the name of Eleanor Reynolds, my mom, opened 2 years and 8 months ago, 32 days after I permanently moved to Chicago. 32 days. I had barely finished unpacking the boxes when she walked to a post office and forwarded my mail. While I was putting together a bookcase, buying new pillows, discovering which bakery was close to my condo, she was scheming the system that would keep everything invisible for almost 3 years. Every account statement, every due date notice, every payment request, everything had gone to that P.O. box. Everything had stayed there piling up while I worked, saved, built a credit history that she was dismantling brick by brick on the other side of the state. I sent a message to my dad that night, short, without emotion, without a direct accusation, just the facts laid out in sequence. I know what happened, I know where the debts came from, I know how you used my identity. You and Mom have 7 days to come find me. Tell the truth and work with my lawyer on a solution. After that, I report everything to the appropriate authorities. Delivered at 11:58 at night. Read at 12:03 in the morning with no reply. The next day, Wednesday, my mom sent me a message saying I was stressing my dad out and that he had not been able to sleep. On Thursday, my sister Sophie sent me a long text, the kind that starts with "I need you to understand" and ends with "Please do not punish me for what they did." I read Sophie's message 3 times. Part of me wanted to believe her. Sophie was always the sister who cries at movies, who sends handmade cards, who shows up with medicine when you are sick. There is a warmth to her that is real and I know it. But Alexander had already sent me a detail about the largest loan, the $7,400 one. The delivery address for the documentation linked to that contract was not the P.O. box. It was Sophie's apartment in Indianapolis. Part of the money had gone straight to her. I did not reply. On Friday, my dad created a family group text with 14 people from the family, grandparents, aunts, cousins, people I only saw at Christmas and on my grandmother's birthday. His message was simple and completely edited. Our family is going through a difficult time because Amanda decided to bring in lawyers instead of resolving things as a family. We ask her to reconsider. Then came the flood. Aunt Karen saying that family always comes first. Cousin Derek saying I was exaggerating. Aunt Patricia saying she could not believe I would do that to my parents after everything they had done for me. 31 messages in 3 hours. Not a single person asked what had actually happened. Not a single person asked for my side of the story. My dad had given them a character, the ungrateful daughter who could help but chose not to, and they had accepted the script without questioning it. Because it is easier to accept a simple character than to admit that the story might be complicated in a way that changes what you think about the people you love. I took a screenshot of every message, all of them. Then I muted the group and put my phone in my desk drawer at work. Melissa brought me coffee at noon, looked me in the face and asked me nothing, just left the mug on my desk and went back to her spot. I drank the coffee, did my work and counted the hours. There were 4 days left. On Saturday morning, day 4 of the countdown, I was mopping the floor of the condo when someone knocked on the door. I looked through the peephole. My mom was in the hallway holding a glass casserole dish covered with aluminum foil and a grocery bag. Her eyes were swollen. She had driven almost 3 hours to bring me food. I opened the door. I did not step aside to let her in. She told me she had made pot roast, my favorite dish since I was a little girl. She told me we could talk, that she wanted to explain. There was something in her posture, her shoulders slouched, her chin down, the casserole held like a shield that pulled at something inside me, at my 6-year-old version who would run to her when I fell at the park. It was exactly that version she was counting on showing up. I asked her directly if she had forged my signature on the loan contracts. She looked at the casserole dish, then at me, then at the hallway. She made that movement with her face that tries to make a smile but never quite gets there. And then she said yes. The word came out like air escaping from a flat tire, small and inevitable. She told me she had done it to keep the family together, that my dad told her it would be temporary, that he was going to pay it back before I found out, that was always the intention. I told her to leave and to tell my dad he had 3 days left. She walked away toward the elevator without looking back, still with the casserole of food in her hand. I closed the door. I did not cry. I did not feel anger. I felt something heavier and harder to name. That feeling of when you discover that a story you thought had one shape actually had a completely different shape, and that you had been living in the wrong shape the whole time without knowing it. On Sunday, my dad called me at 8 at night with a voice I had never heard from him before, cold, controlled, the kind of voice he uses with suppliers he is about to cut deals with. He told me that if I did anything he would call my company and tell them I was emotionally unstable, that I was making false accusations out of a personal grudge. I let him finish. Then I asked him if he was done. He told me he was warning me, not threatening me. I told him warning and threatening were the same thing depending on who was on the other end of the line. There was silence, and within that silence, almost in passing, he said something he nearly let slip. I did what I had to do to save what I built in 30 years. I did. First person, singular. In 5 days of calls and messages, he had never denied anything. But that was the first time he said, I did it. 2 days I told him and hung up. On Monday nobody called. The message group stayed quiet. The phone sat on the kitchen counter all night like an object that lost its function. I went to Alexander's office in the afternoon. He had all the documents organized on the conference table, the same ones as before, but now with all the boxes checked, all the lines filled out. Only one thing was missing, my signature, the real one. He told me that in 12 or 18 months my score would be recovered, that the fraudulent accounts would be deleted, that the process worked even if it was slow, even if it was silent, even if at first it did not feel like a victory. I told him I wanted to give them the full 7 days, that tomorrow first thing in the morning I would sign everything. He nodded. I went back home. I cooked rice. I watched half a movie without paying attention. I went to bed at 10. At 11 at night, on an impulse I could not quite explain, I opened the real estate agency's website. The condo with the morning sun balcony was still available. The price had dropped a little. I bookmarked it again, this time with something different in my chest. Not exactly hope, something more like certainty. On Tuesday morning I sat at the kitchen table with a pen and signed every document. My hand did not shake. Alexander filed everything electronically before noon. The police report for identity theft, the formal notifications to the credit bureaus, the documented claims for each financial institution. At 4:30 in the afternoon I heard the first car down there, then a second, then a third. I went to the window, my mom's car, my dad's pickup truck, Aunt Karen's SUV, Uncle Michael's old car, and Sophie's car, a model I had never seen her with before, relatively new, bought during a period when her boutique in theory was in the red. 5 vehicles arriving in a caravan. I sent a message to Alexander. They are here. He replied, I am in the parking lot. I am coming up. I opened the door before they knocked. My dad was in the front wearing his Sunday sport coat over his work shirt, the uniform he wears when he wants to project authority. My mom was behind him holding her purse with both hands. Sophie on the right with her arms crossed and red eyes. Aunt Karen and Uncle Michael on the sides. Cousin Derek and Cousin Hannah near the stairs, like someone who is not sure they want to be there. 8 people, my family. My dad said they were here to resolve this as a family. I told him they were 7 days late for that. He told me that is not how things work, that I could not put a deadline on my own father. I told him I had not put a deadline on my dad. I had put a deadline on the person who committed identity theft using my name. Alexander arrived next to me and introduced himself. He handed out his card. My dad looked at the card like someone looking at something that should not exist in the scene. I opened the door wider and told everyone to come in. They entered. Nobody sat down. They arranged themselves in a semicircle in the living room like the audience of something that had not yet started. I put the documents on the coffee table, one by one, without rushing, without drama. I showed the contracts, the addresses, the P.O. box registration in my mom's name, the enlarged signatures with the mistakes marked in red. I recounted the timeline with the precision I would use to present an audit report, because that was exactly what it was, an audit of my own life. Uncle Michael was the first to grab one of the documents. He is farsighted and moved the paper away from his face to see better. He stared at it for a while. Then he looked at my dad. He said his name as if it were a question. My dad told him not to get involved, but Uncle Michael said he had known my handwriting since I was a little girl, that I had signed his graduation card, and that what was there was not my handwriting. Aunt Karen looked at the document in her husband's hand, then looked at my dad. She told him that he had told them I was refusing to help my sister, that I was being selfish, that he had not mentioned anything about contracts in my name. My dad replied that it was temporary, that he was going to pay it, that he did what was necessary to save 30 years of work. Alexander spoke for the first time since he had entered. His voice was at its usual volume, like someone reading the minutes of a meeting. He said that forging signatures on financial contracts constituted a serious legal matter, that the unauthorized diversion of mail constituted a violation of privacy, and that all the described actions had been reported to the appropriate authorities that very morning. He let the numbers hang in the air without rushing. Aunt Karen brought a hand to her throat. Sophie had not said a single word since she walked in. She stood near the living room door with her arms still crossed, looking at the floor. I spoke directly to my dad without anger, without my voice shaking, just the ordered facts. I told him I gave them 7 days to come find me and tell me the truth, and that instead they used those 7 days to put together a message group, mobilize the family, and try to destroy my reputation before I destroyed theirs. I told him that this morning I had signed all the necessary documents with my signature, my way, in my handwriting. My mom made a sharp exhale like someone who had been holding their breath for too long. I said something I had not planned to say. I told my mom that she should have protected me. I watched as that sentence landed on her. I saw her knees give out slightly and Aunt Karen holding her by the arm. I saw my dad blink once faster than normal. I saw Uncle Michael step 2 paces to the left, putting distance between himself and my dad, without saying a single word about it. Then I said, I was not the one who destroyed this family. You did that 3 years ago when you decided my name was something you could borrow without asking. I am just refusing to keep paying for the damages. Alexander closed his briefcase with a sharp click. It was the loudest sound in the whole living room. They left in the same order they had arrived, but more slowly. My dad walked out first. He walked to his pickup truck with his hands in his pants pockets and closed the door without slamming it. Somehow that was worse than if he had slammed it. A door that slams still has energy. A door that closes slowly is the sound of someone who has nothing left to say. My mom walked out leaning on Aunt Karen's arm, crying in a way I had never seen her cry. They were not the tears she used on the phone to manipulate me. It was the kind of crying that distorts your breathing, that has no acting in it. Aunt Karen left without looking at me, but also without saying anything else. What she was feeling stayed locked inside her. The cousins walked out together, heads down. Sophie lingered. She stood at my door with her keys in her hand, looking at me with that same expression she always made during storms when we were little girls. The little face of someone needing shelter. She told me she really did not know the whole problem. I told her she was driving a car bought using my identity. She opened her mouth, closed it, and walked toward the elevator. Uncle Michael was the last one. He stood in front of me and reached out his hand. I shook it firmly. He did not apologize, he did not tell me he understood. He just nodded his head in the kind of movement that means I saw what happened here and I am not going to pretend I did not see it. And then he left. I closed the door. Alexander was standing by the coffee table gathering the documents. He told me I had done the right thing. I sat on the couch. The condo was completely silent. The table was clean, except for a few paper clips and the absence of 8 people who until that afternoon were part of my family. I told him I knew and that was why it hurt. The legal process is not like it is on TV shows. It is slow, bureaucratic. It is made of official documents, certified mail return receipts, and emails from compliance departments and deadlines that stretch for months. Alexander sent the formal claim to each creditor with a copy of the police report and the handwriting expert report on the signatures. The replies came in different weeks with different corporate languages, but with the same result. The first credit card was erased from my history after 40 days, then the second. The personal loans took longer, especially the ones from the online lenders, which have a slower internal investigation process. But 2 months after starting the process, all 3 had been successfully disputed and removed from my report. The fraudulent payroll loan was the most complicated because it involved an invented employment relationship, and the institution had to cross-check data with other agencies. It was in dispute for 4 months, but it came off. 8 months after discovering my score of 320, the number was at 624. I called the real estate agent for the condo with the balcony. The property was still available. The price had dropped a little more. I signed the purchase contract and the mortgage on a November morning at the title company's office with documents so thick that the paper made noise when I turned the pages. I read every clause, put my initials on every page, and when I got to the final signature line, I paused for a moment. The last time someone had signed my name on a financial document, it had been my mom's hand in a city 2.5 hours away, using a form I had signed without suspecting anything. This time the hand was mine, the choice was mine, the condo would be mine. I wrote my name slowly, with a capital A the way I learned in the first year of middle school, with the R in Reynolds that goes from bottom to top before curving, with the final stroke that always goes up a little before ending. Melissa helped me move on a Saturday in December. She brought coffee and a playlist she described as motivational, but which was basically just upbeat songs, which in practice is the same thing. We carried boxes in the morning, assembled furniture in the afternoon, and at 6 in the evening I sat on the balcony with a cup of tea and watched the Chicago sun hide behind the buildings. I hung the condo key on a small brass hook near the front door. Every time I walk in and see that hook, the feeling is the same. This place has my name on it because I decided it would. Not because someone gave it to me, not because someone owed it to me, but because I worked, I saved, I refused to stay quiet, and I secured it. My contact with my dad is non-existent. For now, the legal negotiations are still ongoing. I let Alexander handle the communications. From my mom I accept letters. She writes me one a month short, with handwriting that is more careful than ever, as if she is trying not to make a mistake in the shape of any letter. I read all of them. I have not replied yet, but the door is not locked, it is just not open yet. With Sophie, silence. I do not know if we will ever speak again. I cannot rebuild something with someone who still has not told me the whole truth about what she knew and when she knew it. Uncle Michael calls me every 15 days. We talk about ordinary things, the price of construction materials, his favorite sports team not doing well, whether it is going to rain on the weekend. He never mentions my dad unless I mention him first. He became the family member I have the most contact with. I did not lose my family. I lost the version of it that never truly existed. The one where everyone told the truth and nobody used someone else's identity without asking. The real family, the one that is left, is smaller, but it is honest. And honesty, I learned, is worth more than quantity. It is a February morning. I am sitting on the balcony with a coffee that is still too hot to drink. The city is waking up down there. I have a meeting at 10, a lunch scheduled with Melissa at noon, and a grocery list to stop at the supermarket on my way back to the house. My house, my name on the deed, on the contract, on the mail that arrives directly here only for me because I am the only one with the key to my mailbox. My dad said that family takes care of family. He was right about the phrase and wrong about what it means. Taking care of family is protecting the people you love. It is telling the truth even when the truth costs dearly. It is never signing someone's name on a paper they did not see. It is not using people as collateral and calling that love. Setting a boundary is not revenge. It is the first honest act you manage to do for yourself after staying quiet for too long. I did not win anything beyond what was already mine. I got my name back. I got back a credit history that reflects who I really am. I gained a balcony with morning sun, and the certainty that I do not owe anyone anything for something I did not do. The coffee has cooled down enough. I take a sip. It is good. Comment. Hey everyone. I wanted to share a few thoughts after putting this story together for you. What struck me the most was the quiet strength it takes to stand up for your self-respect. Setting boundaries can feel scary at first, but it opens the door to real peace in your life. I truly believe that genuine kindness includes being honest with the people we love, even when the truth is hard. Taking responsibility for our own future instead of carrying burdens that aren't ours is such a powerful act of self-care. If you've ever felt torn between family expectations and your own well-being, I hope this reminds you that it's okay to choose yourself. Healing often begins the moment we stop ignoring our inner voice and start listening to it. You deserve relationships built on mutual respect and genuine care. Choosing peace isn't running away. It's the bravest way to move forward with integrity. If you liked it, don't forget to leave a comment and support the channel by subscribing. See you in the upcoming stories.